You have Neanderthal DNA inside you right now. Not a little, not a trace. Between 1 and 4% of your entire genetic code came from a species that went extinct 40,000 years ago. Scientists confirmed this in 2010, and the world has never quite processed it properly since. Think about what that actually means. Somewhere in your family tree, not metaphorically, not symbolically, but literally and biologically, a modern human and a Neanderthal had a child together. That child survived. That child had children. Those children had children. And that chain of survival continued unbroken for 40,000 years until it produced you. You are the result of the most ancient relationship in human history. And then, at some point, it stopped. Modern humans and Neanderthals lived side by side in Europe and Asia for thousands of years. They shared the same forests. They hunted the same animals. They sheltered in the same caves during the same storms. The evidence of their interbreeding is written permanently into your cells. But Neanderthals are gone. Completely. Not a single full-blooded Neanderthal exists anywhere on Earth. And the question of why the mixing stopped, why one species survived and one didn't, why you are here and they are not, is one of the most fascinating mysteries in all of human science. Go back 50,000 years. Europe and Asia are not human territory yet. They belong to the Neanderthals. These are not the hunched, dim-witted cave creatures that old illustrations showed. Modern science has completely demolished that image. Neanderthals were stocky and powerful, built for cold climates with barrel chests and thick bones that could absorb enormous physical stress. Their brains were actually slightly larger than modern human brains on average. They made tools. They buried their dead with flowers and objects, which suggests they believed in something beyond death. They used pigments to decorate their bodies. They cared for their injured and elderly. Skeletons have been found of individuals who survived serious disabilities for years, which means others fed them and protected them long after they could no longer contribute. These were not animals. These were people. Different from modern humans in significant ways, but people nonetheless. And when modern humans arrived, walking up from Africa in waves over tens of thousands of years, they met these people. And what the DNA record tells us clearly and undeniably is that they did not simply nod at each other from a distance. They mixed. Geneticists studying ancient DNA have found evidence of multiple distinct mixing events. Not one encounter. Not a single accidental overlap. Repeated contact across thousands of years in multiple geographic locations. The Neanderthal DNA found in East Asian populations is slightly different from the Neanderthal DNA found in European populations, which suggests the mixing happened in different places at different times with different Neanderthal groups. This was not rare. This was not unusual. By the standards of what we know about how human groups have always behaved when they encounter each other, this was completely normal. When groups meet, they mix. This is what humans do. It is what we have always done. So why did it stop? This is where it gets complicated and genuinely surprising. The first answer most people assume is violence. Modern humans arrived, wiped out the Neanderthals, end of story. But the evidence doesn't support a simple genocide narrative. The overlap period lasted thousands of years. If modern humans had simply been killing Neanderthals on sight, it would have been over much faster. And the genetic mixing wouldn't have happened at all, or wouldn't have happened repeatedly across multiple continents. Something more complex was happening. Researchers studying Neanderthal DNA in modern human genomes have found something striking. The Neanderthal DNA we carry is not random. Certain genes appear again and again in modern human populations worldwide. Genes related to immune function, to skin and hair characteristics suited to cold climates, to fat metabolism. These genes were useful. Modern humans who inherited them survived better in new environments. But other stretches of Neanderthal DNA are almost completely absent from modern human genomes. Certain regions, particularly regions associated with fertility and with male reproductive function, show almost no Neanderthal contribution at all. Scientists call these deserts in the genome, places where Neanderthal DNA simply does not appear. The most widely supported explanation is that some Neanderthal-human hybrid combinations simply produced children who were less fertile, or male hybrids who had reduced fertility entirely. This is actually common in biology when closely related but distinct species mix. The offspring work, but their ability to reproduce is compromised. What this means in practical terms is chilling in its simplicity. The mixing didn't stop because anyone decided to stop. It didn't stop because of cultural rules or social taboos or deliberate separation. It stopped because the children of certain pairings had fewer children of their own. The useful Neanderthal genes spread through the modern human population because the people carrying them thrived. The less useful combinations quietly disappeared because the people carrying them left fewer descendants. Natural selection, operating silently across thousands of years, filtered the Neanderthal contribution down to what you carry today. But that's only part of the story, because Neanderthals didn't just fade out of the gene pool, they disappeared as a distinct population entirely. Population geneticists studying this question point to something called demographic swamping. Modern humans arrived from Africa in much larger numbers than the Neanderthal populations they encountered. The Neanderthal groups in Europe and Asia were already relatively small and spread thin across vast territories. When a small population and a large population mix repeatedly over thousands of years, the smaller population doesn't maintain its distinct identity. It gets absorbed. Gradually, generation by generation, the proportion of Neanderthal ancestry in any given individual decreases. The population that was once purely Neanderthal becomes mostly modern human, with some Neanderthal contribution. Then mostly modern human with a little Neanderthal contribution. Then what we have today, modern human with 1 to 4%. The Neanderthals didn't vanish, they dissolved into us. There is something genuinely moving about this when you sit with it long enough. The popular image of Neanderthal extinction is dramatic. A last stand, a final group, an ending. The reality is quieter and stranger. There was probably no last Neanderthal who knew they were the last. There was just a gradual fading, a slow dilution across generations, until the distinct population was gone, but its contribution lived on in every human being who walked out of that period of history. You are, in the most literal biological sense, part Neanderthal. The immune genes you carry that help you fight off certain diseases. Some of those came from them. The genetic variants that help certain people metabolize fats efficiently in cold climates. Neanderthal. Certain hair and skin characteristics common in non-African populations. Influenced by Neanderthal inheritance. They are not gone. They are distributed. Spread across billions of living humans, their genetic contribution continuing to shape the species that absorbed them. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology, who have led much of the work on ancient DNA, describe the relationship between modern humans and Neanderthals as far more intimate and complex than anyone imagined before genetic sequencing made it visible. The story we told for most of the 20th century, modern humans arrived, Neanderthals died, clean break, was simply wrong. The real story is messier and more human. Two groups of people encountered each other across tens of thousands of years and across an entire continent. They were different enough to be distinct species by some definitions. They were similar enough that their children could survive and reproduce. They competed for resources. They probably fought. They also, clearly and repeatedly, formed connections that produced children. And then one group grew and the other shrank until only one remained. But not cleanly, not completely. The boundary between them blurred and dissolved across generations until the distinction itself became meaningless. When you look in the mirror, you are not looking at the winner of some ancient competition. You are looking at the result of a merger. Incomplete, uneven, stretching across thousands of years, but a merger nonetheless. The next time someone tells you that humans are fundamentally separate from each other, that groups stay apart, that mixing is unnatural, that difference means distance, remember what your own DNA says. Your ancestors looked at the most different people they had ever encountered. People who had been evolving separately for hundreds of thousands of years. People with different faces, different builds, different ways of living, and they didn't stay apart. They never do.